Well, ladies and gentlemen, the day has finally arrived. It is time to talk about the dreaded Fullbring arc. But I have to ask, is it really as bad as people make it out to be? Well, I sat down and watched episodes 343 to 366 to find out. So buckle up, grab yourself a donut, because we are gonna go do this. It's been 17 months since Aizen was defeated, and Ichigo is trying to settle back into the life of a normal, powerless person. Well, technically, he still has the skills he learned through combat training, but there is only so much you can do when you don't have magic ghost powers. Things are kind of awkward for him since there's still random hollows showing up that need to be defeated, but all he can do is sit on the sidelines while his friends take care of them. Then enters the hook that will drive us through most of the arc, the mysterious attacks happening to Ichigo's friends. With things getting more dangerous, Ichigo has to put aside his desires to live a normal life in order to become a hero once again. He must learn that being a guardian of the people is who he truly is. So in a way, Ichigo is kind of like Spider-Man. Ichigo's pursuit of answers leads him to meeting a group of people who utilize a power called Fullbring. One of Bleach's strong suits is groups of powered individuals, and the Fullbringers are no exception. Ginjo, the charismatic leader with a luscious mullet that holds a grudge against the Soul Reapers. Guriko, the barkeep who tragically lost his wife before discovering his Fullbring powers. Riruka, the yandere, who immediately follows head over heels for Ichigo, and is jealous for other people's abilities to make friendships. Jackie, who struggles with not being able to save her family when she was a child and feels shame for developing her Fullbringer powers in the aftermath of tragedy. Yukio, the son of a rich family who felt abandoned and found a new family in the Execution Club. And finally, the goat of goats, the man who lives up to the meme, it's our boy, Chad. So yeah, with this arc, we finally understand where Chad and Orihime's powers come from and how they work. There is one other Fullbringer that needs to be mentioned, and that is Sukushima, the one we are led to believe is the villain of the arc. Throughout the entirety of this arc, we have this mystery regarding how Tsukushima's powers actually work and what his motivation could be. In many ways, he kind of felt like a JoJo villain, which worked for me pretty well. Speaking of that, the way the Fullbringer powers work actually do remind me quite a bit of how a stand or maybe Nen abilities would work. It's not often you see an evolution of a universe's established power system this late into a series, but I for one am glad to see it here. But let's talk a little bit about the grand plan that Ginjo and Tsukushima had to steal Ichigo's Fullbringer for themselves. We do learn that Ginjo is actually a substitute Soul Reaper like Ichigo, but he felt like he could not trust the Soul Reapers after he learned that they were using the combat pass to spy on him. Now this is a motivation I actually can get behind, and I was actually really appreciative to see it here in the show. He doesn't want to be evil or anything necessarily, he just doesn't like feeling like he is a pawn of the Soul Reapers, so he chooses to find a way to gain power for himself so he doesn't have to rely on them. It's established that Ichigo and Ginjo are alike in many ways. Both of them are substitute Soul Reapers who want to protect others, but Ichigo chooses to trust the Soul Reapers while Ginjo does not. And in the end, Ichigo's trust is rewarded when they give him some of their spiritual energy in a form of a sword that is used to restore Ichigo's Soul Reaper powers. When we finally get the big confrontation between Ichigo and Ginjo, I was surprised that Ichigo actually finishes off Ginjo with a killing blow. As far as I remember, Ginjo is the first antagonist that Ichigo voluntarily kills, because Ginjo's desire for revenge against the Soul Society was so great that he was losing who he was and putting others in danger. I'm going to be very curious to see how this affects Ichigo in the long run as we move into the 1,000-year Blood War. But we're not talking about that today, because we still gotta circle back around and talk about Tsukushima. So it turns out that he was working with Ginjo to help prepare Ichigo to have his Fullbring taken. His use of a memory-altering ability was awesome and terrifying. Now what left me a little confused was his motivation. As far as I remember, he wasn't driven by revenge the same way Ginjo was. Now maybe he was just out to gain power for the sake of power, which is fine. It just feels like a basic motivation for someone who is otherwise a fascinating character. And unfortunately, most of the Fullbringers don't get a whole lot to do, besides maybe Riruka. She was really the only Fullbringer that had a significant character arc going throughout the entire series. I absolutely loved the friendship that she developed with Orihime over the course of the arc, and found her decision to leave at the end to be very heartbreaking. So I've been pretty positive in this arc so far, but there are a couple of gripes that I'm going to go ahead and list here. There are moments where it feels like some of the characters are acting out of character for no real good reason. First example is when Ginjo tells Ichigo he shouldn't trust Urahara. Like, this is a guy who's pretty much a complete stranger telling Ichigo not to trust someone who Ichigo had trained and fought alongside for over 2 years. And Ichigo is just like, oh, yep, that makes sense. I should not go to Urahara to ask him about the weird supernatural things happening around me. Like what? Ichigo, what you doing? And the second example is after Chad gets a cut by Tsukushima's blade. He had already heard from Orihime that she experienced getting cut in the same way he did, and then started having weird issues with her memory. So then after the same thing happens to him, he decides it's best not to say anything to anyone. Like, Chad, I know you're kind of the strong loner type, but even I think you probably should have at least mentioned it to somebody. You've been friends with Orihime, Urio, and Ichigo for a couple years now, but nah, let's just keep it quiet, even though it's directly related to the villain that you guys are trying to learn more about. And while I'm already ranting about the way some of the main characters are acting, I do want to mention that it's a little unfortunate that Ishida gets injured early on in the arc and then is stuck in bed for like 90% of the runtime. It's okay, my dude. I really hope you get a chance to shine in the next arc. But that's the end of my ranting. Let's go ahead and just summarize my overall thoughts on the Fullbring arc. I can definitely see why it's considered the black sheep of the Bleach family. It's slow-paced, it has lower stakes compared to the Arrancar invasion or Soul Society. The main cast is constantly making questionable decisions. Ginjo and Tsukushima's best efforts aren't enough to make the Fullbringers as compelling of a group as, say, the Espada or the Gote 13. And despite all of that, I did end up liking the arc. Personally, I would put it above the Substitute Shinigami arc and some of the weaker portions of Arrancar without hesitation. Because while Fullbring has some weaker moments to it itself, what it achieves in world building and developing Ichigo as a character cannot be understated. I'm pretty deep into Bleach at this point, but it's only now after Fullbring where I can say I feel attached to Ichigo. He has had a lot of good moments in the previous arcs, but his motivation for doing what he had done was always, it always felt a little flat. He wants to save people and help his friends, therefore he needs to get stronger to achieve those things. Which is all fine and dandy, but that is something you could apply to literally any shonen protagonist. Fullbring actually has Ichigo putting aside his desire to be a hero, at least temporarily, and living the life of a normal person before it's taken away from him. And after spending some significant time without his powers, he has to reignite the flame that he originally had for being a hero. So even though at the end of this arc, Ichigo more or less has the same goals he's always had, they feel more meaningful now that he had to go through this period of reflection on who he really wants to be. And, oh wow, so I thought this relatively short arc was going to have a shorter review portion to it, but it's gone on a little bit longer than I had anticipated. I did want to talk about my overall thoughts on the Bleach anime, but I think I'm going to save that for another day. On a brighter closing note, the 1000-Year Blood War anime is finally here. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video so I can get back to watching that. Let me know down in the comment how you are enjoying the 1000-Year Blood War anime, or how you feel about the Fullbring arc. Do you agree with my assessment that it's not as bad as people say it is? Anyways, thanks for watching all, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace.